down the stretch.
I'm not worried about playoffs. Not worried about it. I'm worried about us continuing to get better, staying in the moment, focusing on what's right in front of us. And it's by attacking our practices the right way and just building our habits. And it's all about how we improve throughout this process. And whatever happens, happens.
Packers keeping an eye on a couple of injuries leading into Monday night. That includes linebacker Quay Walker. He's got an ankle injury. LaFleur said it's a week-to-week thing. Safety Javon Bullard also starting to do a little bit more with his ankle injury, but is still week-to-week as well. Turning to the Badgers, they're getting at least one starter back in their secondary next season. That's after safety Preston Zachman announced he would be using his sixth year of eligibility with Wisconsin. He started all 12 games this past year for the Badgers. However, Wisconsin appears to be losing safeties coach Alex Grinch. He is expected to become the new defensive at UCF.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget, and now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucks and Thunder are going to play tonight in Las Vegas in the title game of the NBA Cup. Milwaukee is yet to lose an NBA Cup play, while Oklahoma City owns the best record in the Western Conference. Tip tonight is at 7:30. Turning to the Badgers, they'll be back on the practice floor tomorrow. They don't play again until Sunday against Detroit Mercy. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
This cup, I liked it last year as a broadcaster. I love it more as a coach. I think it's good for our league. And there is things you learn. I just can't tell you what they are. Everybody that was here, it's going to help us later.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
That's the soundbite of the day. For me, I had to put that in the intro. Doc Rivers saying, hey, there are things that you learn from this tournament. I just can't tell you what they are. I'm telling you guys, he's funny. He's really funny. He's just up there at the podium riffing all the time, just trying out material, trying out jokes, just shooting from the hip. Oh, yeah, there's plenty to learn from this tournament. I just can't tell you what yet. And, you know, there's some truth to that, too. I'm sure there's a lesson or two to be learned in the championship game tonight against the Thunder. The Bucks are going to play tonight in Vegas, as you heard Zach talk about in the update. So there is some truth to Doc saying, hey, there's things to be learned. I just can't tell you what yet. I'm giving him a little credit there, assuming that he means, yeah, we'll see how the championship game goes and what we can learn against a really good Oklahoma City team. But I just hear him say, I think there's things that you can learn. I just can't tell you what yet. It's like, okay, Doc. I love him. This version of the Bucks for the last month or so has been really fun to watch. And I think the odds are still against them winning another title with Giannis. That's not me being a Debbie Downer. That's just me. That's facing facts, right? Boston is better. There are other teams that are younger. There are other teams that are deeper. I don't want to say that there are other teams that are hungrier. I think that's probably unfair to the Bucks. I think the Bucks are still very hungry. But I've enjoyed Doc. I've really enjoyed watching the team now that Chris is back, just as a facilitator. His insertion back into, not necessarily the starting lineup, but back into the rotation, even for limited minutes, it just makes it a better brand of basketball. The ball's moving a little bit better. He has a sense of where the ball needs to go and when Giannis needs to get it and where to put it. And it's just been a very fun, enjoyable brand of basketball. And they're not going to take precedent over the Packers. They're not going to take precedent right now over college football and what's happening with the Badgers. There's a lot going on. But you know, if you need the Bucks to just be, hey, 2 nights a week, I want to watch some or all of a basketball game, there's a great product right now. And I've really enjoyed them. And I, you know, selfishly as a radio host, I like the Doc Rivers sound bites. They're funny. I get a kick out of them. We're going to talk Bucks in about a half hour. Justin Garcia is going to join us, the Bucks Radio Network, to preview tonight's championship game against Thunder. Mike Clemens in hour number 2. I also have some comments from Matt LaFleur. A doozy of a press conference today. Normally, his Monday press conference or his in-the-week press conferences, they're normally shorter and to the point. He went for 14 minutes earlier today. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but, you know, a couple comments here and there worth talking about, and we'll talk more football in hour number 2. I want to begin with football. I want to talk about Monday Night Football to begin the show, but that's what's coming up. My name is Grant Bills. If you don't know me, welcome. I'm on Twitter at Wisco Grant. You can text and call the show, 608-321-1670. And you can follow and watch and comment on the live stream, YouTube and Facebook, the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bilson. It streams on Twitter as well. Also, if you're a viewer on Facebook, and I don't think that's where a large portion, I look at the numbers, not that it's super important, but I'm curious. A lot of it's off Twitter. A lot of it's off YouTube. We do get some viewership on Facebook, but more than anything, Facebook is a nice means to get information out about the show and what's going on. And we're going to have 3 live shows in the Eau Claire area next week for our Sports Talk 105.1 listeners, WAYY. Monday, I'm going to be at Kai's Chevy Town. Now, that's a car dealership. I'm not going to tell you, hey, come on out. Like, hey, if you need work done on your car, schedule it for Monday, come say hi. I would love to see you. But really, Thursday and Friday, those are the days. We're going to be at Princeton Valley on Thursday. So a week from Thursday from 4 to 6. I'm hoping bring friends. If you want to come see the show and you're like, well, I've never seen a live radio show. Well, just bring a bunch of friends, get some drinks, get some food. We'll have a good time. It's not rocket science. And then the same on Friday at Dean and Sue's, just off at 29 on the west side of Menominee. So hopefully everybody has an opportunity. If you live in Menominee, but you can't do Friday, well, Eau Claire's not a long drive and vice versa on Friday. If you can't make Thursday because you got family Christmas and you live in Eau Claire, well, drive the 25 minutes to Menominee. Not far at all. And both of the events are up on the Facebook page. So if you're interested, click interested, give it a share, forward it to some friends, send it on Messenger. Let's get those events circulating. I want a big full crowd, not to see me, but I just want the places full. I want to bring in a lot of people and have a really fun time, both on Thursday and Friday next week. So shameless plug to begin the show. Let's start with Monday Night Football. I don't know what I expected. I guess we got what I expected. I thought that the Vikings would beat the Bears handedly. And we discussed a little bit last night. It's like, could there be an angle for the Bears to... No, there wasn't. There wasn't a football angle. And I picked the Bears to cover the Niners a week ago. Bill and I both did. I actually felt pretty good about that. I'm like, I think the Bears, interim coaching bump, they got blasted. And at that point, I'm like, well, there is no reason to believe that the Bears as an underdog the rest of the year are going to cover or win. There was no football reason the Bears were going to go into US Bank last night and win. And it was close in the first half. It was 10-3 at halftime, or 13. It was 13-0, 13-0 at halftime. That was more because the Vikings just kind of missed some opportunities. Like Sam Darnold missed a couple of throws and Justin Jefferson dropped a touchdown, or a play that could have been a touchdown. They ended up settling for a field goal. So I don't even know that the Bears did some amazing job keeping it close. I just think the Vikings toyed with their food a little bit. And then in the second half, they scored 7 in the third and 10 more in the fourth, and you get the final score of 30-12, right? Last night was a fun example of an NFL game that you sometimes get in December or in early January when you get into the final, let's say 3, maybe 4 weeks of the season. Every once in a while, you get one of these games nationally televised on Sunday Night Football or on Monday night. Thursday night's probably a little rarer. I think it's more common on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football, where you have a great team and a bad team. Typically late in the year, it's a division rivalry, because the only reason typically that you have horrible teams nationally televised this late in the season is if they're playing a rival. The Bears are playing the Packers. It's Sunday Night Football. The Bears last night playing their division rival, the Vikings. It's on Monday Night Football. You get these games where one team gets blasted so bad, further punctuating a season that's been so bad, that late in the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, the game on the field almost becomes secondary. And what it becomes is this obituary of a season gone wrong and a franchise that's a mess. This, Bears fans, I'm sorry, this happens to you a lot. This might happen to the Bears more often than any team, because the Bears are a large market. They're Chicago. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of tradition. That's a team that still draws national interest despite sucking. And they're rivals with the Packers. And the Packers are nationally televised a lot. So Packers-Bears, it's the oldest rivalry in football. The Bears probably a little more often than they should end up in nationally televised spots, in a spot where they're not supposed to succeed. I think of 2014 is probably the best example, when Tressman's Bears were down, 42-0 at halftime in Green Bay. And you're like, geez, cheese and rice. Or last night, right? The Bears were down 20-some points in the fourth quarter, but it felt even worse than that. The Bears couldn't move the ball, right? The one opportunity they had at a touchdown, Doug Kramer, who's lined up at fullback, doesn't report eligible. I mean, it's just it's a mess. And you have these games nationally televised where at the end, the game becomes secondary. The announcers, they call the game almost like it's a baseball game, where Joe Buck will be like, yeah, in a short run, that'll pick up 5 on 2nd and 10. Back to talking about how the Bears are a mess. right? Like you would in a baseball game. Euchre's telling a story of, when he played for, back in my day at Carson Park, they used to give you $8 extra a day if you drove the station wagon to the next game. You know what I mean? And we put all the wool jerseys in the back. There's the 2-1. It's 2-2 because the game's a blowout and the announcer's telling stories. This happens sometimes Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, and we got one of these last night. And last night checked all the boxes for this type of game. The Bears are getting blown out. Their coach has already been fired. Their quarterback, there's real questions about the future of Caleb Williams. And then the final box that gets checked, and this typically happens towards the end of the game, is you get the contemplative camera shots of the GM and the owner up in the booth. That's how you know we've really reached like a sad state of affairs. Is the game is secondary, and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are going on and on and on about how the Bears are a mess. And there you see Ryan Poles up in the booth, Bears GM. There you see George McCaskey up in the booth as we talk about how his franchise sucks. This, in my recent memory, the only instance I can think of this happening to the Packers is when they got nailed by the Vikings at Lambeau, probably in 2017. And there were those shots of Ted Thompson at the end up in the booth, and he just didn't look great. And like, it's embarrassing, right? When the nationally televised audience or the national audience is listening to Buck and Aikman or listening to Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, and then they show the GM looking down like the disappointed, defeated general looking out over the battlefield after his army just gets obliterated. Like, oh, what have I done? Right? Like that kind of thing. And we got that last night. And I cut some audio because I was sitting at home. I had nothing going on last night. I'm like, I'll pull out my laptop and I'll get some of these comments for the show tomorrow. And it's good. First of all, this is Troy Aikman talking about the job that Ryan Poles has done, because again, they're showing Ryan Poles on the broadcast. It's this obituary style finish. And here's 60 seconds of Troy Aikman talking about Ryan Poles. Listen to this.
And we were very high and favorable on the job that Ryan Poles had done, and I don't come back from that. I think when you look at this team and how it was put together, I like the moves that Ryan Poles has made. They didn't play as well on defense as and they haven't run the ball as well. Is that his fault? I don't think so. But if they had beat Washington, would this season look different? I think that it would. I mean, that was a tough one to, and things have just snowballed since, including these tough losses that we've seen that they've had. Blocked field goal, they don't get a playoff, and against Detroit on Thanksgiving, and just too many mistakes that cost you football games. But in no way do I think that Ryan Poles hasn't done a good job. I feel that he put together a good roster, and this team should be playing at a higher level than they have.
So I agree that Ryan Poles has done a good job. You can criticize him for taking Rome Odunze instead of an offensive lineman in the top 10. Okay, that's fair. Do you think if he drafts an offensive lineman instead of a wide receiver, they have 8 wins instead of 4? Like maybe they'd be marginally better, but I think Rome Odunze is going to be a good player. Like they had lots of holes to go at in the draft. Everyone loved Rome Odunze. Radio Row, he was like the star. The day that he was there, I remember talking to Bukowski. He's like, that guy is it. Everyone was really impressed. So, okay, Poles could have gone O-line instead of wide receiver. Okay, that's one player. Maybe he spent some money on, Gerald Everett. Maybe that didn't turn out to be maybe that's money poorly spent. But they had a pile of money. They still have a pile of money remaining going into this next offseason. And if he doesn't spend it on Gerald Everett, now we're talking this season about how he didn't spend that money. Okay. I think Ryan Poles has done a fine job with the roster. Now, coaching decisions, I think, are his purview. Unless you want to say that, well, Kevin Warren didn't let him change coaches in the offseason. Kevin Warren didn't allow him to actually hire the guys he wanted. Okay. But I think other than the coaching, which is a big part, don't get me wrong, and maybe he could have went O-line instead of wide receiver, whatever. I think Ryan Poles has done a pretty good job. I agree with Troy Aikman that this team is better than what do they have, 4 wins now? I believe they're 4-10. They're better than 4-10. I don't put that on Ryan Poles. Here's some commentary from Buck and Aikman. And again, this is woven into the game because you get this again on nationally televised games. It's no longer a game. The broadcast is talking about how one team is in disarray and the battle has been lost and there's the general, the owner up in the box. What went wrong? So here's Buck and Aikman again, mid-game, talking about Caleb Williams now instead of Ryan Poles.
He told us he is healthy but fatigued, the kind of year that it's been, and he got that big hit. Was kind of laying down over on the bench bench for a moment, but able to sit right back up. This is the time of year when college seasons are ending, so they are long years. And when you're having the year that they're having, they're that much longer. You know, what you worry about, Joe, for a young quarterback, and I went through it. I was 0-11 as a starter, and you know, he's had a much better rookie season than I had. Here's another look at the end of that, the hit that he took. And when you mentioned we were watching him on the sidelines, you know, he was grimacing and in an enormous amount of pain. And as I watch him, you know, you can tell that he's a defeated guy. I mentioned that he hasn't been through anything like this at any point in his career. And what you worry about is a rookie quarterback losing confidence.
So that's Troy Aikman. And the broadcast cut out. There was more good audio after that, but the broadcast cut out. And then when I went to some aggregation sites, they also had the audio that was cut out. So I think that must have been on Disney's end, on ESPN's end. But Buck and Aikman talking about Caleb Williams, those shots of him on the bench, just defeated, grimacing in pain, laying down, struggling, right? This is the worst fear when you draft a young quarterback, is that you ruin him, right? I guess I don't really have a take for you on the Bears and what's gone wrong with their season, other than I thought they were going to be much better. I think Bears fans thought they were going to be much better. Bears fans, and I could be wrong, I think coming into this year thought, you know what? If everything breaks correctly, we could win 10 games and be chasing a playoff spot. Maybe more than 10 games. I saw people, Nick Wright, famously now, he's still living that down on FS1, thought that the Bears were going to go to the Super Bowl. There were lots of people who thought 10-plus wins in a playoff spot, if things break right, totally on the board. And then I think Bears fans would also probably tell you, well, Caleb's still a rookie, so we want to allow some wiggle room for that. Maybe they win 8 or 9 games, maybe 7 if they really get unlucky or deal with some injuries. I don't think any Bears fan was like, well, maybe it doesn't go well and we only win 4 games or 5, which seems where this is trending. Like, even the Bears, if they would have broken down their hopes and dreams for the season as most optimistic, you know, middle of the road, and most pessimistic, they're still coming up short of even, I think, what the most pessimistic Bears fan thought possible this season. And that's insane to me, given how much talent they have. And I guess here's another take for you. And this is something that I've been talking about since week 1. Getting good players is step 1 in the NFL. There's so much more to it than that. Good coaching, good management, good ownership. Just there's so much more. Winning in the NFL is about so much more than we'll just get good players, draft good players, trade for good players. If it was that simple, the Jets would have started winning games a long time ago, and the Bears would have started winning games a long time ago. All these teams, the Browns, the Jags, if it was that simple, these teams with all the money and the best draft capital would have started winning games a long time ago, and they haven't. And I'm actually impressed at how bad the Bears have managed to be this year. That's my take, I guess. I'm actually impressed. 608-321-1670 if you have a thought on this or a thought on the Packers, anything NFL related. I will take your call when we come back before we get to Justin Garcia. 608-321-1670.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You can just keep blaming coaches. You can keep running around. This organization is broken. Vrabel is the only answer. I feel bad for Caleb Williams, but this is what he was worried about privately out here in Los Angeles. My people connected to him said, you're not going to be a bad guy, but, man, look at their history. They've never had a 4,000-yard passing quarterback. That's why I said the Chargers are a little bit – you can kind of look at the Chargers and go, well, look what they did. They got out of the way and got Harbaugh. But the Chargers had never been this dysfunctional. They just lost a bunch of close games. They always developed quarterbacks. They had a bunch of good players. And the ownership group was not meddling. I don't know if you can fix Chicago. Some things are unfixable.
I don't know if you can fix Chicago. It's Colin Cowherd earlier today. It's hard to disagree. I bring up the Bears to start the show today because it's what we watched on Monday Night Football last night. Unless for some reason you watched Falcons Raiders. I don't know that needed to be televised. I think the little score bug in the upper left-hand corner of the Bears Vikings, that's all we needed. The score never changed. It was like 15-6 the entire game. And I guess there was some roughing the passer call at the end that boned the rat. I don't know. I don't care. Both of those teams stink. That game wasn't worth televising. So one game last night was good enough. And I don't bring this up. I don't lead with the Bears to rub it in the face of Bears fans. You guys know. I start the show with it because I'm kind of like Cowherd. It's like, how do you even fix that? How are you that bad? You have good players. How are you really about to be a 4 or 5 win team? It's impressive. 608-321-1670 to your phone calls as promised. Justin Garcia coming up in about 10 or 12 minutes to talk NBA Cup. The championship game tonight. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Wisco Chad for you, Grant.
Wisco Chad, good evening. How are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great.
Good.
It's a little bit of schadenfreude on the great old Bears. It's my, guilty pleasure is ripping on Bears fans.
That's fine.
Especially since they lived down there for a while.
Yeah, that's true. You have some Illinois experience. I don't feel anything watching the Bears lose anymore. It's like walking outside. Oh, the sun came up today. Like, I don't have a reaction from that. I'm just so used to it.
Neither does anybody in Illinois past October 16th.
Yeah, that's true.
Ever.
Yeah.
Every year. It's so funny because the year starts out every year the same down there. They're going to kill. They're going to the Super Bowl. It's 1985 again. And then by October 16th, we suck. We stink.
Yeah, and look, a lot of Packers fans make fun of Bears fans for that, but that's what sports fandom is. Right, Chad? Like, I want to be excited about my team every offseason, even if they might stink. I want to be excited about the reasons they might not stink.
Yeah, but to an extreme, if you're around it enough, they're really malty about it.
They
really
are.
Tell you how, and that's the worst. Like, there's no humble pie until they finally have to eat it a month before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yes. Go ahead.
Like you guys are throwing that Colin Cowherd cake out there. Did anybody get to San Diego was a place where Eli Manning would not go to because they were so dysfunctional?
Yeah.
How quick we forget.
Yeah.
Like, they were that dysfunctional. They figured out how to turn it around.
I think so.
They had Drew Brees.
Yeah. They've always done, if nothing else, they've had good quarterbacks. Right? Like, and he mentioned a couple. Phillip Rivers is one. I don't think Phillip Rivers was that great, but he's better than anything the Bears have ever had. I appreciate it, Chad. Yeah, I guess I don't really care about the Chargers part of that comp. Well, the Chargers weren't the Bears. I don't really care what the Chargers are. This Bears team is awful. I don't even know how you begin to go fixing it. Vrabel is the guy. It's like, okay. Is he? I don't know. Maybe. I know they can't do another Eberflus. Like, they need someone big, but therein lies the problem. Do the Bears want to get someone big? Do they want to pay money for a big name? Historically, they haven't. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Clemhead Mike.
Clemhead. Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent. A little more energy today. This is my main thing. I had to host Bill's show yesterday too, so I feel I'm coming out swinging tonight.
Right. I don't have Twitter, so I want to put in a good word for Rusk County because I did so many hundreds of service calls there, and Sawyer because I did hundreds of service calls in Hayward, and I got to know a lot of really good people up there. So
yeah, we're debating counties on Twitter. I did post earlier today. If you have a favorite Wisconsin county, go ahead and sound off in the comments on the live stream.
Yeah. There's some good news. George McCaskey's only 68 years old, so I think the Bears' woes may continue for generations. So there is that. So
yeah, and is there belief that the son will be better than the mother? Like, I don't think Bears fans are like, well, just wait until the old lady kicks the bucket. The son will whip it into shape. Like, I think Bears fans have even less confidence with the son than they do with the mother.
Yeah. Well, I've seen recent pictures of her. She actually looks like she has her stuff together. So, I mean,
she's 101.
Maybe in control. I don't know, but I'm sure he's in the same mold. I mean, genetics and all that. But so good news for all of us Packer fans. And it's kind of funny going back in history. Back when I was young, we only had regional coverage. I didn't even know I was supposed to hate the Bears till like the 1980s. I had no feelings for them either way, so I just hated the Vikings, the purple carnation of Satan. So I had no idea that I was supposed to hate the Bears. So of course I grew to hate them in the 80s when horrible things happened to us.
Well, of course, hate can be taught in the debate of nature versus nurture. It seems like we can pick up on hate. And look, hating on the Vikings, that's not a bad thing either, Clemhead. I appreciate it. I got to get to two more callers here, and I want to stay on time to get to Justin. Yeah, we're about to see the next couple of years in the NFL, these patriarch owners, Robert Kraft, Jerry Jones. Well, McCaskey's a matriarch. She's a woman, but she is eventually going to pass this to her son. There are all of these kids who are about to inherit their team from their parents. And while I'm not going to sit here and tell you that billionaires understand the real world, but Jerry Jones made his own fortune. Robert Kraft, to the best of my knowledge, made his own fortune. Arthur Blank, much of the same. The McCaskies, much of the same. All these kids, Jonathan Kraft and Steven might be better than Jerry just because Jerry's a nut, right? But we are going to see over the next couple of years these silver spoon children taking over the operation, right? The Kendall Roy, right? Lachlan Murdoch, or whichever one's in, like, these kids who've never had to earn anything on their own. And I'm not saying that they're idiots because they're, children born out of money and nepotism, but typically those people are not well equipped. And the parents hate, oh, my dumbass son never had to work for anything in his life. Eventually he's going to have to take over the thing. Like, I think dysfunction with bad could only get worse as these older owners pass things to their kids who probably even know less about the world than they do, which is a scary thought, unless, of course, you're a Packers fan, because our team does not have one singular owner. We are owned by the public. And how great is that? When we watch teams like the Bears, it's like, oh, the McCaskies ruin it all. Well, no one can ruin it all with the Packers because we're owned by the fans. 608-321-1670. One or two more quick calls, then we got to get to Justin. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Fritz in Fall Creek.
Fritz in Fall Creek. What's going on, Fritz?
Yeah.
What's up?
Thanks for taking my call, Grant.
Of course.
The Bears are so short-sighted. So they've been around for just as long as the Packers, 100 years. Never had a good quarterback, ever. They have the one quarterback, a big-time talent, in Caleb Williams. And they do him the disservice of starting him out right away with a coach who's on the hot seat. So unless you're in love with the coach, get rid of him and bring it in and make it a whole new deal. Because Eberflus this whole time has been more concerned about keeping his job than about the development of Caleb Williams.
Sure.
So you have a defensive coach who's on the hot seat, and then the offensive coordinator is Thomas Brown, who he might be a good offensive mind. I'm not sure. The running back, he wasn't a quarterback. You have to surround him with people who are going to kind of develop him and have his best interest at heart, because in the long run, it'll be everyone's best interest instead of doing this with the quarterback. It's nuts.
So, Fritz, drive it, and you'll hang up and listen. Thank you, Fritz. Thanks for listening in Fall Creek. So I'm with you. I don't think Caleb is excused from all of this. Like, I think he is a product of his surroundings. and he doesn't totally trust what he's seeing. But he's running around it like, you know what would annoy me to no end if I was an offensive lineman or a wide receiver is if we call a play, ball gets snapped, and I hit my blocks and I hold my block for 2.5 seconds. Or I'm a wide receiver and I run my route and I break it at the right spot in 2.5 seconds. I turn around and look for the ball. And the old lineman starts to wonder, okay, is the ball out? And everyone turns around and looks, and Caleb's spin moving, running, buying time. Bro, throw the ball. Get the ball up. So I think that part of Caleb's game, which was a part of his game in college, I think that's probably wearing on his teammates a little. Of course, they're losing, so everything is magnified. But also, and we talked about this with Carmen Vitale a couple weeks ago, joined us from Fox Sports, and she does stuff for Marquee down in Chicago. Her point on Shane Waldron was, this guy gave Caleb Williams the keys to the car, the keys to the house, all of the important documents in the safe. It would be like, hey, you're 16 or you're 18, you're an adult now. Here's your social security card. Here's your birth certificate. Here's access to every single dollar of the family fortune. Here's a brand new car. Here's a deed to the house. Don't mess it up. That's kind of what Shane Waldron did. There was no, there was no growth. There was no, let's bring him along piece by piece. It's, hey man, you're in charge of the team now. Go nuts. And Caleb Williams obviously wasn't ready for it. Very few quarterbacks would be. So Caleb shares some blame, but also I think the approach that they took, Shane Waldron and his staff, Eberflus and his staff, the approach they took with Caleb from day one, if they could go back and do it again completely differently, they would. And we've talked about that. Carmen Vitale hit that nail on the head. Maybe I'll see if I can go find that audio. In the meantime, let's take a break. We'll get back to football. So sorry if I can get to your calls. You'll have a chance later on in the show, but I want to preview tonight's Bucks game for those basketball fans who are fired up about tonight's NBA Cup championship game presented by Emirates, Southwest, by Alaska Air. Oh, Emirates. Okay. We'll talk about that next with Justin Garcia, the Bucks Radio Network.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's been great. This cup, I liked it last year as a broadcaster. I love it more as a coach. I think it's good for our league. And there is things you learn. I just can't tell you what they are. But you don't get this experience during a regular season. This will help us. This will help Oklahoma and Atlanta, Houston, everybody that was here. It's going to help us later.
I love Doc Rivers. I had mixed feelings when they hired him. Like, well, of all the options that are out there right now, I guess Doc is fine. I think the odds are against the Bucks winning another title, with Giannis. It's not out of the question. But if they don't win another one, I'm not going to feel like, well, if only they didn't have Doc Rivers as a coach. You know what I mean? So if we're probably not going to win another title anyways, sorry to be pessimistic. I just think it's accurate. I want to at least kind of enjoy the experience. And this team's been fun to watch recently. And Doc is good for good. Like, that quote's incredible. You learn some things being in this tournament. I can't tell you what we've learned. I can't tell you what those things are. Like, I just get a kick out of this guy. Justin Garcia is here. Justin, you were not out in Vegas. Can you believe this? Earlier on Bill's show, we had Jim Ozarski on. I said, Jim, man, out in the sunshine in Vegas, and he gave me the old, well, we've been out here forever.
We're working.
I'm working. And he had a sense of humor about it. But it's like, man, you could be in Charlotte, Jim, but he has been stuck there for a couple of days with not much to do. And his point was, I don't have the money that some of these NBA guys have to go have fun. I still don't feel bad for him. But you are going to be broadcasting on the call tonight, but just not in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I for the second straight year did not make the cut for travel.
Were you close? Did you get closer at least this year?
I doubt it, but seemingly the only person in the group that didn't make the cut. And what's really been the cherry on top of the sundae here is I've heard the same complaints from the group that I work with of like, it's not really as fun as it sounds to spend a week in Vegas. It's too long. And have been inundated all through the week and weekend with photos and videos, keeping me abreast of everything that Dave Kane and our engineer and the rest of the group are finding to do in Vegas. Like, got some screenshots and texts and pictures of Allegiant Stadium as they took in the Raiders game last night. And
they went to the game. Oh, yeah, there was a game out there last night, I suppose. Yeah.
Everything else. So I get to vicariously live through them.
Well, I'm glad that you're not wasting your time. I just hope they're not working too hard out in Vegas. The Bucks contingent media, Jimmo included. I guess Chris might not play tonight. He's doubtful with an illness. Do we know anything about that?
He was, I don't know what the illness is, the non-COVID illness, but he was on the injury report for the Hawks game with that same issue. He didn't look great in the Hawks game. I wasn't sure how much of that was it's a challenging defense with Atlanta, that they took away some of the things that we've seen Chris really excel at. How much of it was, the guy was on the injury report with an illness. Maybe he still doesn't feel great. So that's the positive. I would assume he's not playing. If at this point, this late, bumping up to the game, you've shifted it to a downgrade to doubtful. But the positive is at least it's not an actual injury; it's an illness.
Give me a minute or two on that Hawks game, because I don't want to bury that. If the Bucks end up losing tonight and Chris doesn't play, like, that's a really nice win. The Hawks have a combination of guys between Okongwu and Capella that no one's really equipped to stop Giannis, but those are the body types and the types of players that can really give him issues. And the way that he performed and the way that Chris has just kind of helped keep the ball moving when he's out there. He's not putting up huge scoring numbers, but that's a really nice win for the Bucks on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's a Hawks team that has been playing really, really well under Quinn Snyder. They've finally found their defense, and I think for years we all kind of wondered, you have these pieces in Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu, certainly DeAndre Hunter, but just one by one, and guys too like Bogdanovich that are at least capable defenders.
Dyson Daniels.
Yeah, and like his addition to the mix has been the biggest for them. He's been everything you thought you were getting from DeJounte Murray. But just looking at the roster, you would think, like, how are you guys at least not like 12th defensively? How has this not come together? And now it finally has. The interesting part was I agree that, in terms of the bigs, Onyeka Okongwu is probably the guy that has held up best against Giannis throughout his career, and the Giannis stopper of Al Horford, if you want to entertain that. But what made them so tricky, and at first you were kind of wondering how is this going to factor in tonight against Oklahoma City, is they seem to say, okay, let's just let the bigs take Giannis. Jalen Johnson had it at times too, but we're going to use the wings as our helpers that are defending the perimeter and trying to limit Giannis as the facilitator. Because I can't tell you how many times we've heard Eric Name ask that to opposing coaches before games of, what would you rather have? Giannis scoring 40 points and being unstoppable, or Giannis with his 10 assists and finding open shooters? And I think maybe one coach has answered it honestly, where you can see like, well, I'm not giving you the strategy. But that was clearly the Hawks strategy of, yeah, we'll let Giannis score, but we're not going to give up any of those looks to the guys in the perimeter. And that's where it's interesting tonight, because I think that's in some ways going to be the approach of the Thunder. I would assume Lou Dort is who defends Giannis tonight, because that's the other piece. If you're a wing player that has acreage that you can hold up and you can withstand some of that punishment from Giannis, those are the guys that have also kind of given him a little bit of challenges. Obviously, Marcus Smart, we think about Alex Caruso, who's on this team, and Drew Holiday last year with the Celtics. Lou Dort is every bit that guy. So I would assume it's going to be Lou Dort's, Caruso when he checks in. Those are going to be the defensive assignments. Kason Wallace, I would guess, has taken Dame Lillard, but it's almost unfair going against the Thunder, because it's not so much a, do we let Giannis score? Do we let the other guys score? Like, they have defenders just growing on trees that they pick one after the other and say, okay, these guys are going to take Giannis, and then we have help defenders that are going to be able to rotate on the perimeter.
And if the Thunder is way looking into the future, I know we're not talking about the Thunder here, but if the Thunder get bounced again in the second round prematurely, they become a prime candidate for the classic Bill Simmons, too many guys team. Like you got too many. You laugh, but hey, that's what I thought about the Hawks for a while. But it started to come together, and maybe Quinn Snyder was the missing piece. I actually forgot he was their coach until Saturday. Not a good look for me. But I'm like, oh yeah, he's there now. So with Middleton back, tell me the difference that just the presence of Chris Middleton. He doesn't need to be 100%. He doesn't need to be scoring 30. Just the presence of him being on the floor and being able to play basketball for 22 minutes, what does that do? What can he affect? And then how does that make life easier for those around him?
It's a number of things. Like, it juices the bench units because, first and foremost, and I'm not saying this guy was an elite scorer for that second unit, but first and foremost, DeLon Wright hasn't played since Chris Middleton returned. So Chris is kind of assuming that role of, okay, he'll run the offense for the bench units, which we saw a lot of last year. He gives you that stabilizing force. Bobby Portis talked about this with us for about 5 minutes after a game recently of, Chris is just like our organizer, that he knows how to calm things down, how to get us set, how to get us all in the right spots in our offense. Like, we feel like we just flow better with him on the floor. the offense hasn't been there. I think who cares, right? Like Giannis is playing like an MVP. Dame is still consistently scoring 25 or more. And the offense is going to come around for Chris, but he's made impacts as the facilitator and as just a threat of, okay, if we double Giannis and kick out to Dame, that's one pass away and we can rotate over. But then Chris is there too, where it just puts the defense in scramble mode. And, also it alleviates so much from Giannis and Dame because now you can get to those spots where they could both, obviously not ideal for an extended period, but they could both be off the floor at the same time because you have Chris running things.
Well, and Bobby, who's looked better the last couple of games, is just asked to do less. It's like, hey, man, take fewer shots, be a little bit more efficient. I still think the best version of this team includes Bobby Portis contributing in some way, just being a little bit more dialed in defensively and with rebounding. And then, we don't need as many post-ups. We don't need as many inefficient shots. And if Chris is back taking some shots of his own and also finding better shots for others, Bobby doesn't have to take all of those looks, or he doesn't feel like he has to take all those looks. Ideally, and I don't want to make this a Bobby Portis thing because I think that's played out enough on the internet. Let's talk just for a couple minutes briefly before we wrap up. The NBA Cup, we're in year 2. It was the midseason tournament. I guess now it's the Emirates NBA Cup. I hear it talked about a lot on sports radio. I think it's kind of lazy, not to call it other shows, where it's like, are you into this? Is this your thing? And then the other host would be like, nah, what does it even mean? What's it for? It's like, okay. But the players obviously get into it a little bit. I think the teams in Vegas are like, well, we're competitors. We're here. We might as well try to win the thing. And there's some money on the line. It's better to win than lose. I think in year 2, this has been about what you could have expected. I think this has been solid. And it's giving us a reason to talk Bucks right now and to watch a game tonight when I bet a lot of us maybe wouldn't.
My favorite has always been, and I've gotten it from a few people, tell me why I should care about this. Like, okay.
You decide for yourself.
Well, you know what? You just decided you don't care. So,
yeah.
But no, I do think it's overall been a success. You cannot watch these games and have any other takeaway other than, okay, I know the players are actually trying in these NBA Cup games, the qualifying games, the quarterfinals, all of it. Like, I see the effort level is there. And we've spent a lot too, we as in the media, talking about young teams, and Doc and Rick Carlisle had talked too about, I don't think the Pacers reached the conference finals a year ago if it's not for the NBA Cup. I think a lot of people applied that to teams like the Rockets and even the Thunder this year. Maybe that's what this young team needs.
Sure.
But I don't think it's crazy to say, why isn't it helpful to the Bucks too, that it's a team that's starting to figure things back out. The regression or progression to the mean, and a lot of their shooting numbers have finally swung around. Their defense has looked a lot better. Earlier in the season, they were playing good teams competitive, but they were losing the games, and now they're starting to win those games. So I do think it's helpful for all of these teams to at least get that extra charge. It's going to be interesting to see with all of these teams, okay, what does the basketball look like after the cup run ends? And is it kind of, okay, now we can take our foot off the gas a little bit? But I think it's been
over. We got to be worried about it.
And I think it's been everything that the league has been hoping for in terms of what it's done. The players care. They're trying to win. I think obviously the money has been enough incentive for that group. So the interesting thing to me is like, what else do they tweak? But anything they change, it's basically just for the purpose of ratings because of the interest and effort level we've seen from players. They care. So you don't have to sell them anymore on people tossing around like, do you need to automatically get an extra draft pick if you win this thing? Or do you get like an automatic home court advantage, or you can't finish lower than 6
seed or something?
I hate all those scenarios where you're messing with the regular season and even the draft pick one that a few people, even earlier today, somebody proposed to me, well, what if you just get that first pick outside of the lottery if you win this thing? I mean, it's still opening up a big can of worms with the CBA of like pick swaps and trading first round picks of, okay, well, we want that pick because that one's better than the one that you're trading us. So I think that's way too complicated. The only change I would make to it is I would just, number one, I think they need to do a better job of really explaining to all fans, there is no layoff, because I can't tell you how many times I heard it from Bucks fans too of, I'd rather they lose in the quarterfinals and just get a week off. Like, no, you're still playing the games. You have 80 games scheduled. So you either play 2 games in the tournament or you make up 2 games. So explain that a little bit more, But this game tonight doesn't count in the win-loss column, in the stats, none of it. I would change that to where it counts for the winner. So if you win the game, you win any tiebreaker situation you're in.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I think little tweaks here and there. And back to your original prompt of, tell me why I should care about this. It's like, well, you don't want to care. You just want to shoot holes in whatever I say. So, and that's fine. Talk about football or go do something else. And I thought when you said the league needs to do a better job explaining, I don't have a great soccer brain, the whole group stage thing. But I'm not going to act like that's the league's fault. Like I could take 5 minutes to reread we could apply ourselves a little bit better if we wanted. So make of the in-season tournament or the NBA Cup what you will. And if it's not your thing, fine. But you don't need to shoot it down for everyone else. I think it's been a success, and anything above the norm in mid-December, I think for the league is great. So I think through 2 years, and I'm excited to watch tonight, even if Chris Middleton doesn't end up playing. I'm sorry I didn't get to go to Vegas, but I'm very appreciative to have you on the show to talk about the game first. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, I mean, if I was in Vegas, I'd be outside doing stuff. I couldn't just hold myself in here preparing for this game and binging the Aaron Rodgers documentary. So I guess.
Did you start it? Is it good?
I've only seen one episode, and it's everything I expected it to be so far.
Okay. I'm taking a couple days off for Christmas next week, and I know I'm going to have some time at my folks just with nothing to do. So I think I'm going to watch it. And I almost want it to be so over that I almost want it to blow me away a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. We'll get back to it, Justin. Enjoy the game tonight. Thank you for the time.
All right, we'll see you.
See you. Justin Garcia, Bucks Radio Network. I agree on the front of the NBA Cup. Tell me why I should care. Why are these games any different? Well, I guess they're not. Do you want to get into it? Do you want to care about it? If the answer is no, well, then just don't. That's fine. And for show purposes, we're going to take a 3-minute break, come back and get right back into football. So we don't need to spend the next 20 minutes of the show being like, how do they fix the NBA? How do they make it better? I think it's fine. And if it's your thing, cool. And if it's not, that's cool too. We'll talk football when we get back. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
the Wisco Sports Show, and my computer just froze. So I'm without audio to come back. So instead of waiting 10 seconds and then coming back awkwardly, I'll just jump right into it. If you have any thoughts on what we talked about with the Bucks or what we began the show with back at 4 o'clock when we talked about the Vikings and when we talked about the Bears, I would love to take your call. 608-321-1670. I thought we had some great momentum and some really good calls in the second half, and then we had to pause because I wanted to get to Justin Garcia to pay service to the Bucks and the nice spot that they're in tonight, playing for an NBA Cup. And you can roll your eyes a little bit. What's this new weird tournament? What does it even mean? I don't know. The games are highlighted a little bit. The players try a little harder. It's in Vegas. There's some prize money on the line. It's kind of cool, and it's mid-December. So any, extra 5 or 10 or 15% attention we're paying to the NBA, great. It's more than we would have been without the. So the NBA Cup, it's not reinventing the way we watch basketball, but it's given a little extra juice. And I think for mid-December, that's about the best that the NBA could ask for. One thing that I wanted to point out, because this window of time before 5 o'clock is a little short. I don't want to wedge callers in here because I'm going to have to cut you off. One thing that's worth mentioning, and this is the perfect spot to do it, the Cubs have traded Cody Bellinger. And the way I see it, I want to make sure that I have the compensation correctly, is they sent Cody Bellinger to the Yankees for a reliever. I think they also attached a prospect, but I'm not sure. It's basically being framed as a salary dump. And how you read salary dump is one thing, but I think calling it a salary dump is fair. I'm seeing 670 The Score do it. I saw them tweet, how'd the Cubs do in their salary dump of Cody Bellinger? Now, they're trading away a player to drop salary, but I also see Sam Olber, Locked on Cubs, making this point. I think it's a good one. Salary dump would indicate that they're getting rid of an awesome player who could help them win to save money. They're shedding payroll by getting rid of Bellinger, but I also don't know where Cody Bellinger was supposed to play because the Cubs have added more players. They have prospects coming up. So Bellinger, who hasn't hit well at Wrigley anyways, is kind of the odd man out. I think this makes sense. What's funny, what I get a kick out of is I'm seeing a lot of Cubs people online who are like, and now we'll see what the Cubs do with the money that they saved. It's like, man, they're probably going to do nothing with it. Because despite what Cubs fans feel about their team, one of the best brands in sports, an iconic franchise, and that might be true, but they don't really like spending all that money. They don't really like going all in the way that some of the other big markets do in baseball. So it's like, well, we'll see what they do with the money. My bet would be nothing. My bet would be they don't do a single thing with it. But Cubs fans don't quite get that, and what a great grift for the Ricketts. It's like, hey, we won't spend any money and we won't go all in on big name free agent players that we should be all in on because we have the money. But our fans will still believe that they're cheering for a premium brand and one of the prestige of the Chicago Cubs. What a great grift. At least the A's fans know. It's like, yeah, we don't like spending money. Cubs relatively don't either, but their fans don't get it. What a great situation for Tom Ricketts. Hour number 2, Wisco Sports Show next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, Wisconsin's wide receiver room going to look different this coming season. That's after their leading receiver the last 2 years, Will Pauling, headed to the transfer portal, led the Badgers with 42 catches this year, had 74 last year after transferring in from Cincinnati. C.J. Williams also leaving. He finished 5th on the team with 16 catches, had a pair of touchdowns. That now makes 20 scholarship players that have entered the portal since it opened last week. Also heading out the door today, safeties coach Alex Grinch. He was announced as the new defensive coordinator at UCF earlier today. Turning to the Packers, they've got an extra day to prepare for the Saints as they don't play until Monday night. Coach Matt LaFleur was still recovering from a late night in Seattle when he spoke with reporters earlier today.
We got back so late yesterday. Yeah, I guess technically yesterday. Came in, basically knocked out the game, watched it with everybody, and kind of got our meeting set for today. And then more or less, there's more of an organizational, like get all the cut-ups ready to roll so that when we got in today that we're on to the Saints.
One injury to watch for next Monday, linebacker Quay Walker. He's got an ankle injury LaFleur said might be week to week. Packers could have a playoff spot clinched before they take the field on Monday against New Orleans.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget. And now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucks are going for the NBA Cup title tonight as they take on Oklahoma City in Las Vegas, and the Wisconsin basketball team off until Sunday when they face Detroit Mercy. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
This cup, I liked it last year as a broadcaster. I love it more as a coach. I think it's good for our league. And there is things you learn. I just can't tell you what they are. Everybody that was here is going to help us later.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I love that cup from Doc. Makes me laugh. I want to get back into football. If you have a thought on the Bucks, not going to turn you away. Love to get back to taking your phone calls, 608-321-1670, to kind of revisit and reset the show where we began back at 4 o'clock. I watched every second of Vikings-Bears last night. Had nothing going on. I at no point felt any motivation to switch over to the other Monday night game because I have no interest in watching the Falcons and the Raiders do whatever that was. I don't even know what that was. I watched the score in the upper left-hand corner of the ESPN broadcast, I guess the ABC broadcast with Buck and Aikman. And I'm like, not exactly a barn burner going on over there in Vegas, it looks like. I'll stay here and watch the Bears and the Vikings. And what happened in the second half of last night's game sometimes happens in primetime spots late in the year, the final month of the season, when one team is so clearly lost and their season is so clearly over. And it actually turns into an obituary where the announcers, last night Buck and Aikman, focus more on kind of like just slamming one team for everything they've done wrong. Like, this is Joe Buck and Troy Aikman last night on Caleb Williams and what the Bears have kind of done to him.
He told us he is healthy but fatigued, the kind of year that it's been, and he got that big hit. He was kind of laying down over on the bench for a moment, but able to sit right back up. This is the time of year when college seasons are ending, so they are long years. And when you're having the year that they're having, they're that much longer. You know, what you worry about, Joe, for a young quarterback, and I went through it. I was 0-11 as a starter. And, you know, he's had a much better rookie season than I had. Here's another look at the end of that, the hit that he took. And when you mentioned we were watching him on the sidelines, you know, he was grimacing in an enormous amount of pain. And as I watch him, you know, you can tell that he's a defeated guy. I mentioned that he hasn't been through anything like this at any point in his career. And what you worry about is a rookie quarterback losing confidence.
So that is another interesting, what Buck mentioned at the very end, or what Aikman mentioned there at the very end. He's like, he's not used to this. He's never been in a situation like this before. This is a product of an era of college football where guys are moving around a lot and they can go to the highest bidder, and the best college players can find themselves in the best possible situations very efficiently, right? And I think this is extended down to high school as well. Like, the best athletes are going to go to good high schools. You don't have a lot of, you know, top level D1 type recruits, 5-star players toiling away at high schools that aren't high level, right? And maybe that's smart, right? You want to look out for your ability to get a scholarship and go to college. I get it. But the best recruits and the best talents go to the best programs for the most money, win the most games. Kyler Murray famously did not lose a football game until, I mean, how many years in at Oklahoma was he before he lost? Like, he didn't lose at all in high school. And I think learning how to lose and learning how to struggle, learning how to fight through it a little bit is a skill that's lost on players like Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams, who were always the number one guy, who always went to the top program, who always had the top coach. Right? There's not a lot of history for and I'm using those two guys conveniently enough. Both played for Lincoln Riley, both were number one overall picks, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of strife and resilience for Kyler Murray because it was never necessary. And then you get to the NFL and things aren't easy, and you know, these guys don't always handle it super well. And I think Caleb's handled it fine. You could roll him over the coals for the body language on the sideline last night if you wanted. I don't really blame him. I don't love it, but okay, that's such a small little nit to pick. I just can't believe how bad the Bears. I cannot believe how bad the Bears are. They have good players, and I'll defend Ryan Poles to a degree. He could have done a better job, but this team seems way better than 4 wins. We can go through the decision making of Ryan Poles up until this point. There have been some misses, but I think he, by and large, has done a pretty solid job. He certainly has done a better job than 4-10. Which is where his team currently sits after last night. 608-321-1670. Let's go back to the phones. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening. Windfall for your Vikings last night. What a game.
Yeah, it was a strange game. I kind of thought I had a lot of stress on me with fantasy football playoffs, and I had 2 Viking players in last night, and my opponent had 2 in.
Oh.
And so I was really struggling, and I told Mrs. I-90, I said, we're going for the Vikings win, and fantasy football is just going to have to fall on. But I prevailed and won my fantasy football league too. So
we had an incident in our league last night where 2 guys tied in the first round of the play, like a dead even tie. And our commissioner, we didn't know what the tiebreaker was. And our commissioner went and checked the rules and realized that like he allowed ties, right? Like he had it in the settings where ties are allowed. So he had to make a decision this morning. And I didn't envy the spot that he was in. Let's just say that. That's a wild scenario. Kind of funny, though. I wasn't involved. Meanwhile, my team was eliminated. They had their highest scoring total of the week. I dropped like 180 points. Everyone on my team showed out for the first time all season. So that's always nice.
Nice.
Nobody cares. I know.
You know what I thought Troy Aikman did a good job on that game, and it kind of reminded me a little bit, though. He's like, well, that guy's wide open, and he's missing that guy, and he's not throwing the ball. I kind of got the feeling he was a little bit like Probst off Survivor.
Yeah.
Just nailing the guy when he can't get anywhere, right? I mean, it was like this guy he can't get out of the water, he can't get across the balance beam.
Caleb's still stuck on the sandbags, like stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then my mind went even farther, and I'm like, what if we put like professional football players on Survivor? And because Probst deserves to have his feet knocked in sometimes. I really think that.
I like how they all show much. I love how they all show so much respect and deference to him. Like it's his island, and they're just lucky to be there. I do enjoy that dynamic, though. To be honest.
So I thought a good way to do this would be, and the player I thought of was immediately was Quay Walker on Survivor, and he would drop Probst. He would drop him. He'd be like, Quay can't get out of the water. Quay's struggling with a puzzle. Quay can't get over the balance.
Quay would only shove Jeff Probst if like Probst came up behind him and Quay didn't know it was like Quay. I don't think Quay Walker is a dirty player. I guess you can disagree with me.
No.
I think Quay's
dirty.
I think he's just kind of a dope sometimes.
I think he's emotional. He lets that get the best of him.
Yep. I think there's a difference between dirty and emotional. I'm with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Vikings. I've seen a lot of things there. I've got expectations now, Grant. I'm not just taking these as wins.
Well, geez, you're 12-2. Like you're 12-2, Eric. You're not just a team that got off to a good start anymore. You're not just like the Vikings are 12-2. So for all the people, on Bill's show earlier, all the people who were like, when do we start taking the Vikings seriously? Now. Guys, they're 12-2, and if things break right for them over the next 3 weeks, they could be the division winner and the number 1 seed in the friggin' conference.
Listen, I'm hoping we get through next week's game, and I do think we'll win that one. And, then we're locked in probably as not being the bottom seed of the wild card, no matter what happens. I'm realistic, Frank. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got we've got the toughest schedule of the whole group. Take Seattle out of it. We got to play Green Bay and Detroit.
Yeah, you do.
By far, So let's be just a little. We got to put some games together.
No, you do. And Eric, sorry, I keep jumping all over you. I got to move along here. The Lions have to play the Bears, and then they have and the Niners. They got to go to the Niners, and then Week 18 they play the Vikings. The Vikings got to go to Seattle. They got to host the Packers and then Detroit in the final week. So Detroit needs to lose, I think, at least once, and then the Vikings would need to beat them at the end of the year. And maybe the Vikings would need to need a little bit more help still. But it's in play, especially as the Lions keep racking up injuries. So it's very much on the board. I get a tweet here from Mike who says, at Wisco Grant, high school talent is not transferring willy-nilly. They mostly live where they live. Don't speak this into existence. FFS, which means for F's sake. I can give you a couple of examples, and I don't necessarily blame the kids, but I think it's different now than it was, 40, 50 years ago. Like, I know, and this is, by the way, like, I'll name some names. This isn't negative against these players. It's just a fact of life. Like the Ellenson family, like some of them were in Eau Claire, then Henry ended up in Rice Lake, and I don't remember all the details, but like the Ellenson kids moved around. Those are some tremendous athletes who selected schools or made some decisions based on athletics, and there were probably other factors at play. There's instances in lacrosse where a kid, probably is supposed to go to Logan, but to play basketball goes to Central, and I can think of examples. So I'm not acting like every good high school player is handpicking their high school. But there's plenty of examples of where kids are like, actually, it's better for me to go here. It's not all the time, but if I can think of like 2 or 3 examples off the top of my head, and I haven't covered high school sports, I've really never covered high school sports. I used to do games, but I've never been on the preps beat, right? There's plenty of examples of that. Jalen Johnson, Delfino Square, at one call suck my ball on Twitter. Yeah, Jalen Johnson was he went to Nicolet, but where did he end up? I don't know. It does happen. Don't gaslight me into saying that I'm just making things up. I'm not making things up. It does happen. And I think when young athletes can say, I want to play here for this coach, and if that doesn't work, I want to go here play for this coach. And then in college, right? If I select a school and it doesn't immediately work, I'm going to go somewhere else where they can pay me more. And right? We've made it easier for kids to be in the best possible spot for them. And I think there's plenty of reasons why that's good. But then you also don't have to struggle. You don't have to, like Kyler Murray didn't lose a football game until late in college, I believe at Oklahoma. It's a very famous stat. I'll have to go look it up. I just think sometimes these kids who are always the best, always in the best spot, and then go number 1 overall, they get into the league, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams, and it's difficult because they've never had to experience it before. And I guess that's a champagne problem to have. Like, I'd rather be a super winning player that needs to learn how to lose rather than be a losing player that needs to learn how to win. I think we're seeing that with Caleb. We've seen it with Kyler as well, because Kyler's got all the talent in the world. The personality has sometimes been a sticking point so far throughout his career. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, hey, Tony from Texas.
Hey,
You're
Tony.
absolutely right. These high school kids, they'll go wherever. Hey, nice deep cut with Henry Ellenson. I think he had about 40 points and 20 rebounds for the Wisconsin Herd the other night.
He's playing well. I have a buddy who grew up in Chippewa Falls he doesn't cover. He watches local sports pretty closely. He texted me the other day. I was like, dude, you got to talk about Henry Ellenson on the show. He's hooping in Oshkosh right now.
Yeah. Maybe the next Lauri Markkanen. Who knows?
Why? Because he's tall. Yeah, sure. Yeah. The comparison is, yes, loud and clear and obvious. Yeah.
Hey, Eric from I-90 is so scared to put his chips in. He must have some emotional damage, some PTSD from these past Vikings seasons.
Well, how could he not? He's a Vikings fan. Of course he does.
Come on, Eric. Have some fun. I want to know did he like those uniforms, first of all?
Did you like them? I thought they were cool.
I liked them. Little K-State-ish, but I liked them. I thought they were nice.
What I don't get is why does everyone, anytime a team's like, hey, we have this one special jersey we want to wear once or twice. Just kind of a fun thing. Like, why does everyone at home turn into a graphic designer all of a sudden? It's like, well, if they put the yellow stripe, if they did this, it's like, can you guys it's a fun jersey. Like, take a pill. It's Monday Night Football. It's a little wacky. It's a whiteout at home. Like, we're going to calm down.
Same reason why we have Twitter doctors. Hey, Bucket Aikman, so good. So awesome. Let's not forget Caleb also cried during a game at USC. And when I watched Caleb, I went to this USC Tulane Cotton Bowl. I saw Caleb in person. I'm like, this guy looks like the best quarterback I've ever seen. I know they're playing Tulane, and I think he's got the tools, but the Bears could ruin him. You guys are right. The Bears could ruin him.
Well, they could. I mean, forget ruining, okay? Let's say Caleb Williams remains Caleb Williams throughout this. They still need to rebuild an O-line, find the right coach, right? Like, the Bears need to handle so many things around Caleb. Even if Caleb starts playing great, like, they still have issues. Now, I think Caleb's playing poorly, and he's missing reads, and he's futzing around, doing spin moves and stuff, running around when he probably shouldn't be. But I don't even know. I don't know. Do we expect? Here's my question, Tony, is even if Caleb can get some confidence back. Do we expect the Bears to be able to put the right pieces and the coaches around him? I don't. Why would I? Why would we believe that?
I don't. I mean, we've seen teams that had worse owners before. I go back to the '99 Rams. They had terrible owners. I mean, Jerry Jones has 3 rings. He had Jimmy Johnson. So I think it's possible. Even the Fords, they've been terrible owners with the Lions. So it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's all about culture. You look at Green Bay, and Coward's been really good. I know you're a Coward fan. He's been really good talking about that Green Bay culture. And just Brian Gutekunst worked for Ron Wolf. I mean, this is no just, hey, we're getting lucky, guys. This is like your grandfather passing on your kind of like the light. You know how your grandfather teaches you things when you're going fishing with them or something?
Yep.
These guys learn from each other. They learn what they like and what they don't like and who they are. And it's working for Green Bay. And Chicago, they have who do they look back at? Mike Ditka? You can't. So that's what I think, Grant. It's just different cultures, different ways of growing up. And the Bears have never grown up to the modern times.
I think that the Packers, and it's an interesting comparison, Tony. I appreciate you listening and calling from down in Texas. The Packers, and I maybe previously thought of this as a negative, are so not okay with having down years, right? As the Rodgers era was winding down, I think a lot of us thought, well, push some chips in, trade some picks, and if we got to eat it for 2 years to build it back up, fine. And I really respect the Packers for saying, no, we're not going to do that. When Rodgers leaves, the expectation remains that we keep winning games. Like, it took 7 or 8 games with Jordan Love in his rookie year to figure it out, and that still seemed the Packers brass was like, hey, get it together down there. You know what I mean? Like, the standard of the Packers being, when we're done with this great quarterback, there will be no downtime. There will be no rebuild. The expectation remains winning. And I think with some of these bad teams, like the Patriots have dropped off now. And, a team like the Panthers, a team like the Raiders, like these teams don't know how to win. You can draft good players. You can hire what you believe to be good coaches. But if there isn't that expectation, that approach in the building every day, that we are winners, we win games, you get caught in the cycle of losing, and it's so hard to break out of it. And the Bears have been caught in this cycle now for what feels like better part of a decade. Like, didn't they win 10 games? Did they go 10-7 last year? 9-8? I can't remember how many games they won. But just like they're still stuck and they can't get out of it. And the Packers have never even stooped. They've never even put themselves down into that place in my lifetime. Well, we'll tear it down to build it back up. There's no tearing down. There's no tearing down to build it back up. We remain. We are the Packers. We've been doing this for 35 years now. 608-321-1670. Time for some more calls on the other side. I also want to get to some commentary from Matt LaFleur from his presser today.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And the Chicago Bears, who have spent a century destroying quarterbacks, have now found the most talented one they've ever had and have done everything in their power. Remember a few years ago when John Mara said of his own quarterback, Daniel Jones, look, we've done everything possible to screw this guy up. Yeah. John Mara can say, at least we're not that. I mean, what the Bears did this year was they kept a coach they should never have kept. They fired their offensive coordinator who had no clue how to develop a young quarterback. They put in place someone who actually seemed to be getting it. And then after like 3 weeks of that, they fired the coach and elevated that one guy who seemed to have created some chemistry with Caleb Williams, so was headed the right way. And they decided, you know what, you go deal with everything else. We won't worry about the only thing left that matters. They've lost 8 straight games. The quarterback is regressing. I'm not kidding.
It's like at every turn you ask them, what decision could you make to make this work out the least possible way? It's like they're like, yeah, let's take that one. Let's take the risky route.
Let's make Greenberg on Get Up. Greenberg, every once in a while, will put the gas pedal down. Not very often. Mostly he's just hosting, throwing it from panelist to panelist, kind of playing the middleman, right? Playing the distributor, the point guard. Every once in a while, he gets riled up. I always enjoy it. That's from this morning. Yeah, I'm appalled by how bad the Bears are. It's impressive, actually. And I said back at 4 o'clock, Bears fans coming into this year, you probably had hopes and dreams of a season, winning 12, 13 games. And I think you could conceive of a scenario, you could conceive of a situation where maybe that was possible if everything worked out. I'm not saying you would bet on it, but Bears fans in your wildest fantasies, and that's what sports fandom is about, you could conceive of an 11, 12 win season, right? And then I think there was probably a more realistic dream where it's like, but yeah, man, what if we could if we get to 10 wins and scratch for a wild card spot? Like that'd be great too. Very much, very reasonable, very much in play. And then I think the worst case scenario would be like, well, what if we were to take a step back record-wise but win 7 games? Like, yeah, I suppose if some things don't go our way, the division's going to be bloody murder, although I don't think people expected the Vikings to be this good. This is worse than even the most pessimistic predictions that Bears fans could have had. This is worse than even the most, negative possibility that Bears fans were thinking about before the season. It's that bad. So bad where we got one of those that you get these every once in a while, basically an obituary on national television last night where they're panning to show McCaskey and they're panning to show Poles up in the box and Aikman and Buck are going on these long rants about, the problems plaguing the franchise. It's really bad. And Tony in Texas before the break, good commentary on culture. Thank you for the call, Tony. 608-321-1670. Let's go back to the phones. Why not? Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
Hey, John in Cornell. What's going on? I got a call on Bill's show earlier today. It was someone from Cornell. Maybe it was Chris. And I'm like, because we have 2 callers who call the show from Cornell. And I assumed it. I couldn't remember. I was like, oh, we've talked before. And he's like, no. So I guess there's 3 Cornell listeners between this show and Bill's show, which is incredible to me. I had to share that with you because that happened to me earlier.
That is shocking for a population of 1,500 people.
Yeah,
that is
all
pretty
it is?
shocking.
I was going to ask, man alive. Good for Cornell, though. Plugged into their sports.
Oh, yeah. What else do we got to do?
Carrying your weight. Appreciate it, John.
Right. So I was going to say, we were talking about like cultures of teams and stuff. And the Packers, I think the Packers are extremely fortunate with their great culture. And not only with the great culture, but you have to think like they had Brett Favre, and then they passed it to Rodgers. And if Love pans out to be a quality quarterback, which I think he will be, time will tell.
has so far, at least.
How many times has that happened in the NFL? I mean, think about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Who was there before Patrick Mahomes? Nobody. I mean,
yeah,
Alex
Smith directly, but then like throughout the years before that, nobody. Yeah.
Right. So like, I guess my simple point is like, for cultures to be great, that's true. But more often than not, teams or organizations will have that one quarterback that was good. Like the Chiefs before Patrick Mahomes, I can't name any of them that were like phenomenal, went to multiple Super Bowls. Tom Brady's in that same category. You could the list could go on, but I guess my simple point is like, you can have a great culture, but more often than not, an organization is going to have like one Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, probably
not even that.
The closest comparison to this is probably Montana Young Garcia. That's probably, at least in my recent memory. And I'm not a historian. I don't have an incredible sports memory, so there could be an obvious one that I'm missing. But that kind of seems like the most likely comp that we have.
True. But even then, what did Garcia accomplish?
Well, exactly. And we could end up saying the same thing about Jordan Love. But the fact that they got a guy who it's like, yep, Jordan, when you ask people, hey, who's the Packers quarterback? It's Jordan Love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you ask someone, hey, the Colts quarterback, who is it? Well, maybe Anthony Richardson, but it doesn't really seem likely. Like the answer is definitively Jordan Love. They got the guy, no matter what he ends up accomplishing. And that's rare.
You could even say with the Colts, if you stick with that example, it was Peyton Manning and then it went to Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Luck didn't have the greatest career, but I mean, he sustained it. And then once he pooped out, I mean,
they've been looking for a guy ever since. And I think that was probably part of the Packers' motivation to be like, no, we want a guy in the hopper ready to go because it seems so easy. Well, you go from Manning to Luck. Well, okay, we'll get another one. How many years later now? And they're still looking. You know what I mean?
It's been when did Luck quit? Well, Luck quit when Tom Brady was still with New England. So
19,
it's been at least 5-6 years.
19. Yeah, they've gone Matt Ryan. They've had Flacco. They've had the other old Matt Ryan
Carson
at the end.
Wentz.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They had Wentz. I forgot about that. Good God. Thank God we're not that, John. Thank God we're Packers fans.
I'm a Browns fan. It's terrible. It sucks.
You have a long list. None of them are any good, but
I do. No, none of them are good. But speaking of good things, and then I'll get off on probably someone else is waiting. But I was going to say with the Bears, I do think the Bears made a critical mistake in getting Caleb Williams and keeping Matt Eberflus.
Yeah.
Why would you keep Matt Eberflus? It seems like a lot of teams do. They're like, well, we'll just keep the coach and then we'll draft a quarterback and then keep a coach or fight. And then instead of the coach or the GM bringing in the guy they want to play with them, and it just seems like every time a team does that, the quarterback gets the short end of the stick. That happened with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. That happened with Sam Darnold. You could say Sam Darnold didn't pan out with the Jets. He's panning out now with the Vikings. And I would say with Eric on I-90, why not be excited? The Vikings are 12-2.
Of course. They're incredible.
I mean, my goodness, if the Cleveland Browns are 12-2, I'd be doing a handstand with no clothes on. I mean, just saying, man.
No,
God bless.
I think that's fair. I appreciate the call, John. Thanks for listening up in Cornell. The Eberflus thing is weird. And the reason that I don't look, if Eberflus was Marvin Lewis, I'd get it. Okay. Because Marvin Lewis had achieved a certain level of success. He had taken the Bengals to the playoffs multiple times. And with those Bengals teams, you were always kind of left wondering, well, it could be better, but it could also be a lot worse, right? You could have said the same thing about Jason Garrett. You could say the same thing currently about Mike McCarthy. I'm trying to think of other head coaches who have had nice runs. But, you could always wonder, well, maybe you could do a little bit better there. Never thought of the best coach in football, but never really thought of as an awful coach. Eberflus had never taken him, if my memory's serving me correct, never taken him to the playoffs. It's not like he had some signature, well, if we let Eberflus go, we're going to miss out on this or that. Like, it would have been so easy. And I don't get it. Like, was that a huge miss by Poles, or was ownership involved? Was Kevin Warren puffing his chest out, wanting to make a decision of his own? I don't know. We're going to talk with Mike Clemens coming up next. Stick around.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And we knew it at halftime that they were probably going to start amping up their level of pressure. And we saw some more cover zero in the second half. And then we didn't necessarily make them pay when we did see those situations. We had an opportunity down in the red area where it was 3rd and 5. We get a false start. It's cover zero. Christian Watson's uncovered. We finally made it. We missed Jaden Reed on the outbreaker versus cover zero where he slipped. And then we finally made him pay at the end of the game. Rome made a hell of a catch. But I think there was a lot of ops in the second half offensively where we didn't capitalize.
3 reasons why I play that clip. That's from Matt LaFleur's presser earlier today. Reason number 1, it's a stupid reason. Both of the things that just set me off, he said missed ops. It's like, okay. And then why do they call it the red area, not the red zone? I contend it's just a reason for football people and announcers to separate themselves from the common fan. Of course, that's probably silly, but that's the way that I feel. 2 other reasons. I play it because that's a good highlight of some of the missteps they had in the second half and why what felt like a game headed towards an absolute rout kind of slogged down and got stuck in the third quarter. And that was a big talking point on Bill's postgame show and then yesterday when we reacted. The third reason is I like Matt LaFleur highlighting some of the plays. It's like, look, we had the right play call here. We were there to make the play here, and we just didn't. And if any one of those plays hits, this is probably a 37-13 game instead of 30-13. And if it was 30-7-13, would Packers fans feel drastic? I think a lot of Packers fans would feel a lot better. And I think that's kind of silly because 30-13 is still pretty good. But I understand we really want them to roundhouse a team at some point, and maybe that's the Saints. Coming up on Monday night. Mike Clemens joining us now, the Bay Motel in Green Bay. Mike, what did you make of that set of comments from Matt LaFleur? Anything that jumped out to you or set you off one way or another?
I got a couple more for you. Besides missed ops,
Yeah.
complimentary football.
Yep.
I mean, they're just wearing the hell out of that.
You know,
everybody's saying used to be in. Well, we have to be good in all 3 phases.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you're in front of these football players and you're drilling them with this stuff 5-6 days a week, you know, you're a teacher. You got to be up there and to keep people from dozing off or looking at their cell phones, you got to come up with new phrase on the grass. Out there on the grass.
Routes on air. They say that routes on air. It's like, oh, God. And the complimentary football thing, that set me off a couple weeks ago when the Badgers played the Gophers, and they looked awful. And Luke Fickell's at his podium like, well, just a lack of complimentary football. It's like, wait a minute. Complimentary football would lead you to believe that one side was playing good football at a time or another. If you get your breaks beat off both sides, you just played bad. That's not a lack of complimentary football. You just sucked. There's a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's attitude. No doubt about it. So, you know, you find a phrase, but, you know, they're trying to plant this mental seed, this focus into this team. Like, okay, if you're really only a gunner or, you know, or a kicker or something like that, and you're only going to get 7 or 8 plays a game, you know, you've got to perform though. You know, it's all on you. Whatever. Hey, I'll tell you something else that LaFleur said today at the end of that presser from that clip that you were playing is the fact is Romeo Doubs has got the best hands on the team. And so even though this guy's been up and down and then the weirdness where he ducked out the week of the Rams game and took a weekend suspension and all that, and he said it's no surprise. Everybody in the building knows why he's got good hands because no one works as hard as he does on the judge machine. He says, he worked with Julio Jones down in Atlanta. I've never seen a guy on the judge machine as much as Romeo Doubs. And it's no wonder, you know, going on 2-3 years, why this guy can make a catch like he did to save Jordan Love from a ball that was just a little too low.
Yep.
Nice. It was a nice blown away ball, right? To take it away from a defender to minimize the chance of it being picked off. But it had to be a hell of a catch. And it's 7, man. And that's the kind of play that's going to make a difference in the playoffs. And it's not only that, but he's also talked about how Doubs has worked on his release. And Matt LaFleur, and I'll go over this 100 times,
This guy is a first-year NFL coach, and it's OTAs. And he's got a much more veteran team back then with Aaron Rodgers and company than he certainly does in 2024. And he runs right up to this tight end. No. This tight end is supposed to run it down and out. He's supposed to line up on the right-hand side, go down 7 yards, cut, and go across the middle. And he stands there with this tight end. Here's your first step. Here's your second step. Here's your target. Here's where we're going to move. Here's now where you're going to juke out, then take a step to the left. Now you've got 3 more steps. It's not until you take 3 steps, then you start to raise your hands. Your hands are at your side until you take that 3rd step when you're across the middle. Now you look in. You don't look in before. Because just like quarterbacks, you know, the tight ends can target themselves to linebackers or coverage. When you turn your head and said, oh, man, the ball's going that way. And he's doing this to Jimmy Graham, who'd caught all those touchdowns from Drew Brees. And he treated him like a rookie because he didn't care. And that's the stuff LaFleur is just nuts about, is that this stuff is all in sync. And that's why they started loving up Dontavian Wicks last year, because of all those route runnings and precision. It's just that dude still can't catch the football.
And he can block. So he can do everything the Packers need him to do out on the field and do most all of it at a really high level, except for catch the ball. Although I'm interested over the last couple of weeks if they can't get Dontavian Wicks going, Mike, because this is something that I was kind of hashing out on Bill's show yesterday. If the Packers go up against the Eagles, let's say, so the Eagles wide receiver 1 is going to be better than the Packers wide receiver 1. And I think Devontae Smith, their number 2, is better than the Packers number 2. What the Packers can claim is our 3-4 is way better than your 3-4. And I think they are. But here's the question. In order for that to help you in a playoff game, Mike, your 3 or your 4 needs to be able to go for like $110 and 2 touchdowns. Like, remember what Devontae Adams did in 2014 against the Cowboys in the playoffs, when the Cowboys seemingly did a good job against Jordy and Cobb, and then Adams feasts with all these opportunities, and a big reason why they win the game. Is Dontavian Wicks capable of doing that? Because if he is, I think this team is actually like sneaky in a great spot to upset just about anybody. Otherwise, he's just a nifty, 4th or 5th wide receiver we're really excited about. That's the difference. And I think we're going to learn a little bit more about him and where he stands and what his ceiling is these next couple of weeks.
Well, after that classic last night, in air quotes, between the Falcons and the Raiders, and I thought about, my God, it's no wonder Josh Jacobs is just so grateful to be. I mean, what a dumpster fire.
No kidding.
And Devontae Adams leaving there. It's just they have absolutely no direction. Nothing.
Well, he had to get out of there. He had to get to the Jets.
They're going to get a lovely draft pick. So after watching that, then I rewatched Seahawks and Packers, and one of the biggest things I came with trying to figure out what happened just before the half, but in the game overall is, to me, Grant, it's Christian Watson, it's Josh Jacobs, and now it's Dobbs, and it's not Wicks, and then it's Reed. And Reed, if they're going to double team him because he's so good and so versatile, then we'll just jet sweep this guy. We'll find other ways to get the ball into Reed's hands, because it seems that the minute he releases the line, he's in some sort of double coverage, or they bring a safety over. But that's it, man. It's Watson, it's Jacobs, it's Dobbs, and that's an offense that they can march into the postseason with.
I've been really impressed with Watson, and I know he had the bad fumble. And I know he dropped the long ball, but these contested catches, or the ball that he had to go down towards the field to get the other night, Mike, like, he's been really good. If you can get past the very obvious and glaring big plays, he's been excellent. So this is the only other thing I cut from Matt LaFleur's presser. If you want to listen to it, we can. He starts going off and singing the praises of how well Christian Watson is practiced. Let's listen to this. And I have a question. I have a follow-up, because this got me thinking about something, but here's LaFleur earlier today.
Yeah, I think Christian's been practicing better. I think he's had a great, probably, I don't know, last 2 months. He's really showed up, and it's showing up on game day. So he's made a lot of great plays. That catch he made on the sideline, that was big time. He also drew a pass interference call. That was a 40-yard penalty that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but that was a big time play. So, and not to mention, he's blocking his butt off as well. So he's doing, in every phase of the game, he's been A+. Guy is extremely intelligent. We can move him around. He rarely will have a mental error. and he's doing a good job of winning his one-on-one opportunities.
So Christian Watson has always been team player, always willing to block. He's fought through injuries. He's done from a personal, from an intangible standpoint. He's done everything you could want him to do. But now I'm curious, like, well, he's had a great, I mean, he's practicing harder. Like, has there been a step up from Watson that you've seen? Did he used to maybe slack at practice a little bit? Like, I don't think that's the case. So what do you make of that comment? Because that just got me wondering.
I don't know. It's probably got Christian wondering as well, and I just think that it just comes down to he's not thinking. You know,
Sure.
I mean, he's doing things with enough repetition, things that they worked on with him in the off season, that he's just getting to the next level, and now he's doing it without thinking, and that just makes him faster, and a tougher target.
Well, he's
There are
healthy
times-
too. He's been able to practice, knock on wood, for a prolonged period without interruption, which I'm sure helps a lot too.
Well, and he makes some of these catches though, trying to save his quarterback. I mean, was it the Dolphins game where he's open in the left-hand side? There's a guy that's coming over, and and Jordan underthrows him, and so he goes up there and tries to get it and jumps over guys and ends up banging himself in the sidelines. And you're like, oh my God, he's hurt. But then after the game's like, no, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. And like the other night, he had a similar situation where he thought, oh boy, there's a leg injury, and he said, no, I got spiked. The guy cleated him on the shin. So I got a scratch in the shin. Give it a couple days. That'll be fine. Nothing that serious. But I mean, he's got kind of that giraffe build to him where sometimes, his hands are out there and instead of putting the hands in the right position, he tries to bat the ball with one hand and it doesn't bring it in and, make more of a football move, if you will. And so that can still make some of those balls. But just like that play that LaFleur was talking about right there, this is a great play by Jordan Love in terms of like, all right, I'm making this decision. It's a good decision. I'm putting the ball in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm either going to get incompletion, reception for a huge gain, or I'm going to draw a PI, but I'm not going to throw an interception. And that's been a huge help for Jordan Love because I think he's only thrown one pick now in the last 5 games.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Wood asked about that today too. It's like Jordan Love is taking more checkdowns. I think he's just found his rhythm and his groove and learned how to avoid a little bit more risk while still pushing the ball down the field, though.
Here's another one. If Caleb Williams in Chicago had made this play, I mean, all of Chicago would have a blessed Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Love, because our eyes are so used to the last 6 or 7 years of Favre and 15 years of Aaron Rodgers, but how about that play where they draw a guy off sides, they've got their back to the end zone, and Jordan Love chucks it up about 35 yards, and Tucker Kraft is under it on a free play, and they get a huge gain. I mean, we take that for granted. That Jordan Love watched Aaron Rodgers do that, learn how to do that. That whole unit between Myers snapping the ball, Love taking the ball, Kraft knowing free play, and getting in position and being alert for it. The Packers make that look easy, and credit those couple of years with Rodgers showing them everybody how that's done. Those little things like that are just tremendous. And I also think that this Packers team does a much better job than most teams when they're in 2-minute drill, and that's what made that last minute and a half before halftime such a head scratcher. They was like 80 seconds on the clock, and they only ran 3 plays.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
Well, the mess up is because Aaron Rodgers used to get if they were in 2 minutes before half or at the end of the game, the quarterback took over the play calling.
Yep.
And so LaFleur thought, hey, we're up 20-3. Go ahead, kid. And then Love was kind of like, I don't know what do you want me to do?
Sure.
Really? And that's what totally took them out of that rhythm. And they wasted 30 seconds when maybe they could have had 2 or 3 more organized plays and gotten 7 instead of 3.
I think that win in Seattle was probably their best win of the season. And maybe that speaks to, it's not like they have a win over the Lions or the Bears. They didn't beat the Eagles. So it's not a necessarily high bar to clear, but I also think it's big because they avoid going to 9-5. If they lose that game, Mike, they're 9-5. And all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to beat New Orleans. We can't not beat New Orleans because if we lose to New Orleans, then we're staring down the barrel of Minnesota, right? But they win in Seattle, and now it kind of changes that point of view. Well, let's go beat the absolute brakes off of the Saints at Lambeau in the cold, and then we have a rematch with the Vikings, right? And now Jordan Love's been healthy for a while. Like the difference of a win and a loss, not only for the record and to keep pace in the wild card, but for the point of view and the perspective of these final couple weeks, I thought Sunday night was huge.
Well, huge for defense. I mean, Jeff Hafley, for another week came up with a defense that fit the strengths of the offense, and they took away the screen that they had gotten so burned on against the Lions. You got to Geno Smith 3 times, then he ends up leaving the game. And then when you were up on the score, and now you sack Sam Howell, who's just a deer in headlights. It's his first time, under center for the Seahawks, and he gets sacked 4 times. That's just like what they did to Will Levis, week 2, was it, against the Titans, where once they went up, they just let those guys stack their stats.
Yep.
Just go after the quarterback. Go ahead. Everybody gets a
Like
sack.
against the Titans earlier this year. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Titans game, exactly. That's what was happening there to end up the night with 7. But here's what you did learn. I mean, one buddy of mine that I was talking to that covers a team in another market said, "You guys might have the next Von Miller there." I go, "You're right." This is a guy who covers the Broncos in Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah.
Those are Von Miller numbers, man.
Yeah.
7 combined tackles. They let him go 4 times. He got a sack. He got 2 quarterback hurries. He took down Smith on the play where he ended up leaving the game with the knee injury. I mean, and this is after missing 3 weeks with a hamstring. He is so quick. He's all over the field, and he seems to be picking up things for a rookie. Like, hey, wait a minute, they keep throwing the ball right over my left shoulder. If I drop back just a little bit more, if they try that crap one more time,
Yeah.
I'm dropping back. And he picks off a slant and gets an interception that was a momentum shifter with 5 minutes left in the game. I mean, and he still only played like 57% of the snaps. They're still rotating him in with Eric Wilson. And it's funny, Quay Walker's out now for the next couple of weeks with an ankle injury.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to care. It's just let Cooper get in there more.
Yeah, well, and that'll get more snaps for Cooper. And hopefully, coming back from that hamstring, he continues to get more confident. And as a rookie, every game, every snap that he plays is crucial because, he's just gaining experience and gaining knowledge about the game at the pro level, just his first season in the NFL. Mike, appreciate your time. I got to run. We'll talk more towards the end of the week and give our final Packers thoughts before breaking for Christmas and before the Saints game on Monday night.
Sounds good. Talk to you then, Grant.
Mike Clemens, excellent stuff. Thanks to the Bay Motel in Green Bay. Quiet, cozy, comfortable, just a mile from the stadium. BayMotelGreenBay.com. That was really good for Mike. That was perfect, too, because he had something going on today, so he wasn't able to cut up some sound. I'm like, I got 2 comments. It's perfect. That's all we need. We just talked about the Seattle game. And Edgerrin Cooper, I keep forgetting to talk about Edgerrin Cooper. God, I'm excited to watch him again and again every time he takes the field. 3 minutes, we'll come back, wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And I would say Matt LaFleur does not get enough credit for what he is as a football coach. He just kind of gets glossed over. He's like, oh yeah, he's a Sean McVay guy, like whatever. Like, no, he is a legitimate head football coach, both sides of the ball. He's done a great job bringing in Jeff Hafley to run the defense. They've been, really, honestly, they've been the unsung team this season. Like we even just talk about their division. We talk about Detroit. We talk about Minnesota. And this is a team that's done it. We talk about Detroit being banged up now. Green Bay was banged up. Now they're getting healthy. I think they're a dangerous team coming into the playoffs.
It's Matt Hasselbeck on the Herd earlier today. Matt LaFleur, don't count on Matt LaFleur. I mean, you could do this about a different NFL coach every week. There's so many great coaches. None of them are ever employed by the Bears, which kind of fits with our theme of the day. The Bears really do suck. Bears fans, I'm not trying to rub it in. I don't need to rub it in. It's rubbed. It's all over. You've rubbed it all over. You understand. God, what a bad team. Bad season. Hey, you listening in Eau Claire on WAYY Sports Talk 105.1. Going to have some live shows next week. Going to be live at Kai's Chevytown on the north side of Menominee on the 23rd on Monday. But really, we're trying to draw big crowds. Princeton Valley a week from Thursday, the 26th, the day after Christmas. Right off the North Crossing in Eau Claire. So not far if you're coming down from Halley or Chippewa Falls. Super easy drive, obviously, from Eau Claire as well. Bring friends. We'll eat. We'll drink. We'll be merry. We'll talk Wisconsin sports. I'm going to have a fish fry. Personally, you can, to each their own. I can't wait to have a fish fry. They do it Thursday and Friday at Princeton Valley because why stop at just Fridays? And then Friday, the next day, the 27th, we're going to be at Dean and Sue's off Highway 29 in Menominee. Big place, lots of room. So bring friends. More food, more drink. We're going to be merry. We're going to celebrate, talk sports. It'd be an absolute blast. There's a Facebook event up at my page for both. The Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bill. So go RSVP, say you're coming, share it, send it to your friends, bring a crowd. Really looking forward to next week. Looking forward to tomorrow. Talk to you at 4.